Thank you, Cushing. So I just want to do a quick introduction. As most of you know, I never really speak at these things. I just go out and find the best people to do it. And Cushing is going to be up in a minute. I did want to mention just one more thing. We have another session tomorrow at 3 p.m. on the 9.1 user interface. So those of you that are thinking about that, we're going to give a full demo of all the new features. Cushing, to me anyway, needs no introduction, but for you, I'll try to give one. He is the guy when it comes to understanding, writing, researching, and speaking about ERP training and the impact of training on project success. I've been talking with Cushing. We've done webcasts. This is the first time we've actually met, and we go back about 3 years. And I was telling Cushing today at lunchtime that I noticed that, 4 years ago, I would have sworn we're never going to do virtual training. Now, 75% of our stuff, public classes are virtual. 2 years ago, I would have said, e-learning, forget about it. It's not anything like real instructor-led training. Now we have e-learning. So when I talk to Cushing, I try to find out what I'm going to be doing next. And I think most of you will find a lot of value. So thank you, Cushing.
I was told I have to speak to the mic because they're recording me for posterity, so I'm going to stand over here. And if I start to drift over here, you guys can chuckle and laugh because the audio guy won't be here to tell me that I'm not behind the mic. As Andy mentioned, my name is Cushing Anderson. I work for IDC. And IDC is a technology market research firm. That's fine. What I spend my time doing, as Andy mentioned, was I look at why organizations train their employees, what the benefits they get for that, how much benefit they can get for more training. I'm a big training proponent, advocate. So more training is always better, but I have to then demonstrate why that is. So this is what this presentation will spend my time doing. I've got about 20 minutes worth of slides, and then I'm hoping to take questions. Feel free to interrupt as we go if something isn't clear. And I'm supposed to repeat your questions into the mic, so if I don't do that, you can also chuckle at me and laugh and point at the mic, and I'll try to remember to repeat the question. How many of you believe that training matters? Show of hands. And for those of you who are playing along at home, I hope you have your hands up. Everybody here in the room put their hands up. Training matters a lot. And the reason training matters is we all believe it is because more skill equals more performance. Surprisingly, we find all kinds of examples where the folks that matter, the guys that write checks, tend to believe that less training is also just as good as more training. But ERP is really driven by, and I try to focus on this too, is that the reason why training is what training is because ERP matters to the enterprise. And because there are circumstances that are impacting both ERP and the IT environment, those will necessarily impact the training environment also. Most of you in this room, kind of like me, we've been around for a while, passed through 2008 to 2009, when the training business, when IT spending was cut in half between 2008 and 2009. We've gained much of that back. It may not feel like that in all cases, but because we lost friends who are no longer doing this, they're doing something else, and because we seem to not be having as many classes as we used to. But basically what we're at a period in time now where there's really no time, there's no wastable money. There's nothing we have extra in our budgets. And when I talk to enterprises around the country and around the world, I'm finding that when I talk to the larger companies, they're certainly paying a lot more attention to emerging market growth. There's more demand for new technologies in the emerging market, kind of at a more rapid pace than we're seeing here in the United States. And so you may, and your organizations may be seeing more spending occurring in other places and other geographies than you might see them in your own, and you're kind of frustrated. But that's the way the IT market is working as we go. And the IT industry, the stuff that people are selling to you, is moving to the cloud. IT managers that you work with and work for in your roles as trainers are having to figure out how to do more in the cloud. And that's really not going to change, and it's going to impact the skills that you have to train your teams and the people that you're responsible for in order to operate more in that cloud environment. And as we see, and IDC has been talking about this, so has a lot of other analysts, we're seeing a greater demand for this, what we call the consumerization of commercial IT. There is more expectation on the part of business users that their IT environment looks more like the consumer experiences that they get at Amazon or at Apple iTunes or wherever, which changes the kinds of skills that the IT organization needs to have in place, which impacts the way the ERP works, which impacts the kinds of skills that you need to train, again, your target learners on. There is that crumbling of the business and personal wall in IT, same experiences. And we've all heard about this, what some organizations are calling the SMAC economy, this social, mobile, analytics, and cloud, high availability, big data capture, storage, and analysis. All of those things are going to be impacting the kinds of skills that are going to be necessary in our organizations. I'm not trying to tell you anything that you don't already know. The intention here is to get us thinking that the reason why training matters is because all of these trends matter, because these trends matter to the enterprise. And we need to, and the advocacy that I make in the training industry is that training will be more relevant when we can demonstrate the impact we have on these kinds of trends. One of the things that I like to do is ask IT managers and CIOs, okay, what are the most important drivers of ERP success? Now, since I'm not a big, here's the reveal kind of guy, I don't build my slides very well, you know, if you close your eyes and think about it for a moment, then open your eyes and look at this top bar, you'll see what I believe. That skill of the project team and dedication of the team comes in a close second, are the most important characteristics that drive, most important factors that drive ERP project success. Our bosses know that. The CIOs, the IT managers, the organizational stakeholders that are supporting ERP adoption all believe this. All this other stuff is kind of nice to have, whether the technology performs, whether we have good business objectives, and we'll see people write, if you read business magazines, you read Harvard Business Review, and they'll talk about clarity of project objectives, and they'll talk about effective risk management and all this other stuff. Yeah. What matters more than anything else is that skill of the project team. Have you all, what was in your examples, I'm asking you guys to agree with me, but if you don't, that's fine. Anybody in the audience, tell me, have you had an example where a manager that you have believed that something else on this list is more important? Has anybody said to you, geez, change management or effective communications? Anybody have any examples? And I'm going to repeat you for posterity, so it's your chance to get by proxy onto some sort of living cloud source. Yes, sir, in the back. Good-looking man in the back of the, oh, you look very dapper, sir. And buff, too. You work out? Excellent. So, please. Okay.
Wherever these statistics came from, I would argue that the biggest impact on any project success recently in my business is executive responsibility.
Got it. So the very buff man that's actually gotten far uglier since I started talking to him a minute ago he was concerned that the definition of project. So be careful when you don't agree with me. When I ask you to agree with me, you really should. It's helpful. Is he asked where did these statistics come from? Because his experience is that the biggest factor that supports project success is executive sponsorship. Is that a fair retelling? Okay, he said he did acknowledge enthusiastically, and then I think he's come along to my side that skill matters more. But in the meantime, I do in fact agree executive sponsorship matters. And I think it's even on here somewhere. Yeah, 20%. So it's about in the middle of this row. This survey came from research I did in 2012, asking. I don't think I list how many it is. It was ERP, so it's 212 ERP projects conducted in the United States sometime in the 12 months before I did the survey in May or something. So between May of 2012 to May of 2011-ish, 212 projects. You'll see some more statistics on it as we go forward. Because most executives don't actually do the work, their sponsorship is, call it necessary, but not sufficient. And if the project, and if executives aren't sponsoring the project, and you're aimed, and an effective team is aimed at the wrong thing, yes, they can probably waste a lot of time. But let's talk. But I think there are. Let's go to the next. One of the things that I looked at, and you asked a good question, sir, though I didn't repeat this part of it, was what constitutes project success. So because ERP projects, and over this happens to be this particular chart, it talks about all types of IT projects. As you can see, because I probably should read the source of this, N equals 554 respondents were IT managers responsible for 545 IT projects. This was conducted in 2011. And because IT projects each have different kinds of objectives, I genericized it and say, so considering all the objectives you had, and I asked about a bunch of different kinds of objectives, but of all the objectives you had, what percentage did you achieve? How many of them did you meet? I asked about timeline goals. Did you meet your project time delivery goals? Did you meet your budget expectations? Did they meet the stakeholder objectives? I asked a series of questions like that, and that's what, when I talk about project success, I'm talking about the amalgamation of all of those kinds of goals simultaneously, because again, every type of IT project has a different kind of objective. In this case, what I'm showing off here is how well skilled was the project team, and what kind of project success, what percentage of stakeholder goals, timeline goals, and budget goals did an organization achieve. And just like Lake Wobegon, no IT project team was less than average, as you can see, nothing less than a 5. But what we did find is that organizations that were significantly better skilled achieved greater project results. I hope, if we start this from what I said right up in the beginning of this, I'm an advocate, that training matters. This is an indication that training matters. More training, and I substitute training and skill back and forth. We all would recognize there's some difference there. Some organizations that are well skilled need less training, but it's really about the skill, which is why I ask about it in the survey. And so what we can see is that a small change in overall skill, going from, say, team skill about average to team skill just under 7, whatever 7 is, can move project success rate from about 30% of project objectives to something close to 70% of project objectives. 70% of project objectives is good, but it's still, you're not hitting 30% of them. So even getting into the kind of mediocre range of a 75, when I was in grade school, a 75 is what I was shooting for, but it was still pretty mediocre. Okay? An organization needs to be much better skilled and to start achieving more and more of its project objectives. Someone intelligent in the back, like the gentleman who mentioned before, might wonder, what is a team skill of 5? And I'll tell you that for research purposes, I ask a very, this might get a little geeky, it's who I am, is I ask an organization of, knowing what you know of your team, I just simply ask on a scale of 1 to 10, how well skilled are they? I don't ask for a measure of exceptionally skilled or anything. And when you ask enough people, that kind of averages out. So that's what we're getting with it. I don't have a particular measure for what equals a 5 or what equals a 6, but this is what it turns out to be. Better skilled tends to get higher marks. When we talk specifically about ERP-related projects, this was the 227 N equals blah, blah, blah conducted last year, it's a slightly larger change in skill. That's, I'm going to back up just to show off. I like this animation that you can do with PowerPoint back and forth. It's kind of clever. You can see that some ERP project teams are a little less skilled than the overall IT, more honest, I suspect. But you can also see that there's a slightly larger change in skill required to move you from 30% to 70%. Okay? You can move, so an average team skill still results in an enterprise application project missing about half of its project objectives. Again, those project objectives can be anything from timeline to budget to stakeholder objectives, and we'll talk a little bit about those as we go. So far clear where I'm going here? I can't tell you how much training your organization needs. Beautiful lady is sitting in the second row here, looks clearly very intelligent. How much training does your organization need on a recent ERP implementation? Depends on the person. She says, kind of ruefully, you're laughing at me for even asking the question. It does. When you talk about the target learners that you have in your organization, how well skilled are they on this scale of 1 to 10? She's thinking hard. She's thinking hard because she really wants an accurate answer here. So if it's the IT staff, she said it depends on whether it's the IT staff or the end users. If it's the IT staff, how well skilled is the IT staff?
I would say 7.
They're about a 7. Excellent. Anybody else want to evaluate their IT staff for posterity? I promise not to evaluate, to describe your organization on the mic. Anybody? Anybody have a, sir in the back, handsome gentleman, once again, buff again. Sir. Staff is close to an 8, he says, boastfully. The user community is, he says, and then trails off, so it was hard to hear from the front. So, once again, couldn't hear from the back, and that's just fine. Sir, I'm not trying to rub it in here, okay? Everybody's trying to tell me how low he just described his staff, and I'm trying to not get that recorded. I'm trying to be, okay? So that kind of works, right? So you can kind of guesstimate how this would work out, right? In the back of the room, sir, with your skill about your IT staff is an 8. About how many project objectives did you meet? Of all the project objectives, what percentage did you meet, would you say? And he said 100% of his project objectives in the second half of that was? And he just finished implementing. So when you have an 8 or more, you certainly you achieved more of the objectives, more of the JD objectives, product objectives, than, say, lady in the second or third row who might not have achieved. How many objectives did your organization achieve in the latest? She says she achieved less than 30%, which is excellent. No, she didn't. She didn't say that. She said she achieved them all. So I apologize. I was trying to justify my own existence here. But it does matter. And if your team was better trained, would something have been different in your project?
Well, we wouldn't have had to we did have to get consulting for certain areas.
They did need consulting assistance for certain areas because your skills weren't robust enough in those areas. That makes sense. Okay. So you can see how this would work. When you ask enough organizations and plot them out this way, it does turn into this curve. Nobody is actually on this curve. There are people above it and people below it, and you push the little draw the line function in Excel, and it shows up. I think I've beaten this horse up. So one of the things I asked about was stakeholder objectives. I mentioned this before. You can see the same curve occurs when you talk about stakeholder objectives, about timeline, about other things. Greater skill equals the greater achievement of stakeholder objectives. In this context, stakeholder objectives, in my mind, end up being things like, do we achieve the actual business benefit we were shooting for? Processing benefits, those sorts of things. As opposed to IT objectives, which is also a stakeholder, or budget objectives and things like that. Here's one on business objectives. But it's still interesting to note that even a better than average team, a skill of a 7, results in an enterprise application project missing about 30% of its business objectives. That may be good enough for a lot of organizations. But if we're honest with ourselves, we still have room to get better. So what I try to get organizations to do is to focus on what those business objectives are and how well skilled and what skills does the project team and the end user community need in order to achieve those specific objectives. Because clearly we can train people to do everything and hope some of that is necessary, or we can train them to do the things we need them to do and expect them to get that stuff done. Go back to that first or second slide that I showed. We don't have a lot of room to waste. So we need to be more specific about what skills we want our teams to have to achieve what outcome objectives, not just knowledge objectives. I can list the 24 reasons why something is, that's not useful. It may be necessary, but that's not the thing that matters. So one of the things that I'm asking organizations to do is to define specifically what they're hoping, and I'm putting down the remote control because clearly I don't have good control of the remote, is to ask organizations to specifically describe the kinds of behavior or the kinds of outcomes that they're hopeful to get. The one I tend to remember, because it happens to be at the top of this list, and you'll get these in both the recorded version, but also I think they'll be happy to share the deck with you, anybody, is backup jobs are successfully completed without failure is the objective. And I have found in the research that a well-trained team completes backup jobs more successfully completed without failure 60% more often than a less well-trained team. So if it matters to an organization to have backup jobs successfully completed without failure, we might want to train, or we might want more training. So what I'm trying to get at organizations, and what I'm hoping you'll take away from this, is to seek out the specific business objectives or IT objectives, get those to be articulated, and if we train to that, we are more likely to achieve the objectives that people outline for us. We can see some other examples here in archive and retrieval. Compliance with legal and regulatory requirements for archiving email is achieved more than twice as often when teams are well trained, or teams are trained to do that, than when they're less well trained. Now that makes a lot of sense. If you're not training the organization to archive email and other content according with specific legal and regulatory requirements, it's less likely they're going to actually get that done. PCs are protected from viruses, spyware, and adware in accordance with IT policies twice as often. Makes sense. It's almost random if it happens and you haven't trained them to do it. This also is a way for us not to waste our training. If we're aiming at specific goals, whatever those are, and there may be a lot of them, we'll know who to train and what skills we're expecting. You can read these others. The other thing this turns into is business benefits for specific lines of business. Your end users, that both the gentleman in the back and the woman in the front were a little frustrated with their end user population isn't as well trained as you'd like them to be. For lots of reasons that happens. And some of them are controllable by you, and you will build better training, and some of them are outside of your control, getting people to consume the amount of training, or even defining what it is you're trying to get people to do. But here is some of the things that an organization implementing an ERP may find is an objective. One company, Accurion Water, had a 40% increase in finance staff productivity when they put in a new ERP and trained them how to use it. I don't have the counterexample that suggests put in a new ERP and didn't train them. I wish I did. Nobody tends to share those with me, so I don't actually have that listed. But I like Cargo Jet Income Fund, which is in the finance world, as you can imagine. They had a 10 to 15% reduction in audit costs when the staff knew how to get the information out of the finance system that the auditors required. If that's the objective, it's easy to train to those things. Same thing with a list of these things. All of these were provided by the companies themselves, and if they're representatives from the companies here and you're embarrassed to see yourself in print, you just tell me and I'll cross you off. But these are all fairly flattering kinds of examples. But all of these are related to aiming the training at the goal, not simply training on the tool, and not simply training because we have the time. We've got to fill up 40 hours. So these are the kinds of things that I'm going to conclude with, and I hope I can take some questions, or I'll tell jokes. I got a million of them. In my view, IT teams must establish a robust training programs to ensure the team, both the end user and the project team, know how to use the deployed technology. Sounds like a no-brainer. But being specific about thoroughly understanding and adhering to whatever those procedures are, and so that every team member has sufficient skills to perform their assigned tasks. Why does that matter? If you bring on a new team member and they don't know as much as the person they replaced, or even if they're an additive to the team, the organizational skill actually declines. I call that knowledge leakage. Over time, organizations get stupider for a variety of reasons. And all the things that happen to us all the time. We put in a new technology, we put in a new person, we promote people out of jobs they're really good at to jobs they're not so good at, and we don't train the people that come in behind them. So over time, I'm giving great hand gestures to those of you at home, organizations get less competent if we don't actively maintain those skills. So we need to make sure that new team members have the sufficient skills to perform their assigned tasks. Team talent cannot keep pace with changes in technology without continuous, air quotes, training. That doesn't mean people need to be in training all the time. It just needs to need to be aware that over time they need to be striving to get better. Now, at this point, I'm supposed to say, because if you're not moving forward, you're actually moving backwards. I don't actually believe that. You should at least be holding your own by getting continuously trained. But organizations really should be focused on what have we done to make our team better, or at least keep up. Are we training new hires? Are we training people into new roles? Are we training them on the new system that we stuck in over the weekend? How does that matter? Are we keeping up our documentation? Just are we keeping up our documentation can be a good step in recognizing and having that as a flag, who needs to be trained on this. Okay, here is my drum beat on the standard thing that organizations need about training. Training and I believe metric-based certifications are necessary to maintain an IT team's high level of performance. You can't be successful if you don't know what you're measuring. Now, are all certifications excellent? No. Will I name the top 5 that stink? No. However, if a certification matters in the area that you're responsible for, try to use it. Because there's a lot of work that went on behind it. If it doesn't matter to you, if the things they test or if the things they train on don't matter to you, don't use it. Certification by it's not like chocolate that you should apply to everything, okay? You should only use it when it matters. Okay? It's more like salt, I guess. It does bring out the flavor. Now, you've hit my standard quota of written puns and jokes and anecdotes. I have a couple of other, that's me on the next slide. I don't know how I managed to fill out 3 Twitter accounts. I'm supposed to show you guys this slide. Mark your calendars for next Reconnect and In Focus. And I'm supposed to show you this. I can't advertise that. I don't know what that is. And that's me. So is there any questions, anything that, any counter examples that you would like to share? Anything that you'd like to let an analyst get smart about, teach an analyst a little something? I am an old dog, but I recently had my birthday. I am now significantly older than I was several days ago. I don't know how it happens, but I'm willing to learn new things every time. Anything from anybody? Another handsome gentleman from the middle back of the room. Excellent.
So on your slide number 3.
And you're speaking in iambic pentameter too. This crowd is amazing. Sorry. On slide number 3, yes.
I'm surprised that nowhere in here is end-user training.
He was asked, he says he's surprised to see that end user training is not on this list. Well, training anywhere isn't on this list because to me that's a secondary event. It isn't the thing, it creates the thing. But I will add that into my next year. I'll put in both end user training and project team training. I don't think I've put on here certifications. On a different list, I might have put in certifications, but not on this one. So those are excellent suggestions to put in. End user training, I presume, project team training might be useful too, and certifications. Thank you. And he was humble about that. Great suggestion too.
Really covered with skill of the project team.
And Andy's coming to my defense, and he's giving me the out, which says that I'm covered by saying skill of the project team is in fact the goal, and that's true. But I don't mention skill of the end user team, if nothing else, to have the corollary there. I don't mention that, so I will absolutely put that in. Any other suggestions? Anybody have any jokes, sir?
No jokes are just the added thought, the observation that seems to be consistent with that comment and two previous comments. The fact that end user skill is not that list is really interesting to see what you guys do. So when I talk to IT executives, I don't say that people are successful. The IT skill is pretty high, right? The end user skill is pretty low. What that tells me is that 2 years from now, I know that it's not 100% successful. And here's the reason I know that. I know that because one of the factors for success has to be the realization of the business case. The business case is based upon realization of the business objective. The business objective is realized based upon the business users. And if the business users don't know what the heck they're doing, 3 years from now, as they're processing the information in whatever transaction system they're using, doesn't matter how many milestones or things we checked off the project, what's success?
So
So that does one of two things, right? Either the measure of success is taken too early.
my input buffer is full. Let me, before you continue, I need to simultaneously translate this into the thing. So what the gentleman was suggesting was that in his conversations with executives, IT executives who claim that they have met 100% of their project goals, yet they also claim that their IT team was well skilled, but the end users don't know anything. The gentleman's suggestion was that chances are they do not, in fact, haven't met their business objectives because sometime, if the business objective was some sort of need, sometime in the future, if I may summarize a little bit, sometime in the future, the end user population is not going to be able to do the thing that they were geared to do because they're still just as stupid as they were before. I apologize for using that. It was his words, not mine. That was a direct quote. So that's true. Now, I apologize now. Please continue, and I will happily, I've purged. I'm ready to go again.
So therefore, it means one of two things. Either the victory celebration was based upon project deliverables.
Mission accomplished might have been a little early. Is that what you're saying, sir?
We got it out, it's been deployed, we got it out.
Yep. So he's saying there's at least two reasons why the organization, there's two things that might have gone wrong. First off, and this is my words, not his, mission accomplished was declared a little early, right? I'm just using that as a common colloquium. We all can picture the aircraft carrier. Yep. It was based on project objectives, project delivery, deployment objectives,
Right,
or
missing, the key missing is your point of the person that
he left. He was bored with my jokes.
end user training skill isn't even in the list of important objectives.
So he says, or end user skills weren't in the list of objectives. Therefore, you can declare success without having any.
So what's so successful?
Excellent points. Those are excellent points.
Would be much more successful.
Yes, leave it off the list and you'll achieve it 100% of the time. Yes. Sir, may I ask for 140 characters or less, please?
Quite simply, this seems to be subjective in that you have targets of IT managers or teams for their perception of project date, whatever. But the project invariably is for the business. Have you done the same survey for the same projects, but from business's perception?
You're not in market research, are you, sir? So the gentleman was suggesting that the results on this slide were somewhat biased.
Saying, no, what's in that bias?
Oh, subjective. You said subjective.
To the same test, proper using.
Yes, he's suggesting that we do ask the same question of the user side for the same projects. And I quipped that you're not in market research, because that is a hugely complicated, difficult exercise, and probably unnecessary. For the same projects. For an equally large population, I will take your advice and attempt to do that on the business side for projects, because that actually would matter. I just don't need them to be for the same. I'm not trying to be quibble, but that's just market research geeky stuff. So I will, in fact, attempt to do that too. That makes a lot of sense. I hope we will end up seeing something similar, because if we end up with team skill goes down to the bottom, we're out of a job. So, let's just hope.
I think you will find that training is still important. The lack of would create a perception of failure.
A lack of training would create a perception of failure, as he's suggesting. Excellent. Thank you. Sir.
For the purpose of this briefing or your studies and your research, did the IT managers, did you see a lot of business case objectives listed as some of their success factors, or was it more geared towards project milestones and deliverables?
They had both. So the question was, do they have listed as business case objectives or project milestones? In the research that I was doing, I was asking about both, and I don't remember the precise statistics, but it was very high, had objectives in both categories to be measured against. Yes, according to those that responded to me, yes, in a very high percentage. There are lots of reasons why surveys go fluey. If you ask the wrong people that can't answer the question, you get bad results. But we try to qualify that. But so yes, they do have. It was well over 90% of or at least over 90% of those folks had both IT milestone objectives and business case objectives simultaneously. That the IT respondents, to the gentleman in the front, the IT respondent audience knew. They knew those objectives, and they could render it, because I asked, can you render an opinion on? And if they can't, I don't send them the Amazon gift card, so they're incented to say yes. Anything else? Your lips are dry. Look at me. I'm up here yapping away, and a lady in the front row is maybe she's telling me my lips are turning pale. Any other questions? Sir, one more in the back.
Just out of curiosity, in your best fit line, where you had some 8s and 9s that drove some of the numbers, where did you, of your 244 respondents, where did most of these IT managers feel that their groups, just on your research, where did you get them? Did you get all 5s or 7s, or where did that fit?
No, there was a... I don't think I actually did a distribution graph that shows the question the gentleman's asking is for these kinds of charts. He's curious about where on the team, what was this team skill distribution across 0 to 10? Is that a fair summary? I don't have a distribution graph of that. Excel would have spit at me, I think, if it couldn't extend the line up to 10. And as a matter of fact, I think you can see this actually stops at 9 and a bit. So that implies to me there weren't sufficient number of 10s for them to extrapolate into. Does that make sense? Any other questions? Geeky? Color scheme related? Okay, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much. Andy, thank you very much for sponsoring me to come to this. I appreciate it, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the event. Thanks.